All right, welcome to episode 17 of the Waking Warrior podcast. The focus here is to talk to veterans of all different branches and services and lengths about their stories. And I've got with me today Otis McGregor. He is a former Green Beret, 84 to 2009. He is a keynote speaker. He's done multiple TED Talks. He currently runs Tribe and Purpose, in addition to running a podcast. So you got a lot of stuff going on. Really excited to have you on here, Otis. I really appreciate your time. I'd love to start off with the early part of your story that maybe not a lot of people know. What prompted you, like where did you grow up? What happened? What prompted you to get into the Army in the first place?
Yeah, great to be here, Scotty. Thanks for starting this platform just so folks can share their story and other folks can hear and learn from it. Uh, yeah, I grew up in Texas, and I decided I wanted to go into the Army probably my freshman year in high school. Uh, I remember talking to my dad about it. So where I grew up specifically in Texas is Fort Worth. And
Mhm.
it was at the time Fort Worth had a Air Force base on the west side called Carswell. I think it's now Joint Base Carswell or something like that now. But it was a Carswell Air Force base then, and it was part of the Strategic Air Command. And
Hmm.
those of you who don't know your Cold War history, Strategic Air Command was in charge of all of our nukes. This is well before any of the space stuff and any of these other organizations that have since been brought up. And Strategic Air Command, the main action arm of it were B-52s. And I remember as a young kid outside playing every afternoon at some point, not always the same time, you would hear the jets up in the air, and you look up and see these massive B-52s flying over, in pairs usually, so two pairs of four. Uh, and one day I remember asking Dad, well, where they're going every day, and he said, "Well, they're loaded up with nuclear weapons to go bomb the Soviet Union until they get a phone
Oh
call.
man.
That's what they do when they take off." That was this. I mean, truthfully, this was the day and age of, they were airborne all the time because you never know when the Soviets were going to launch theirs. And if we didn't have stuff airborne, we might lose all of our, counter strike missiles, or
Mm.
counter strike nuclear weapons was the whole theory of it. So these planes flew every day. And I don't remember all the details now, but it was something like there was X number in the air at all times.
I don't want to think about how
Just
much that cost. As
Oh
a
yeah,
brief
well,
side note, like my dad was a 79 graduate of West Point, and so he served as an
mm,
Army officer in Germany. My granddad was a 1946 graduate, and he was a military attaché in Russia and spent I think a decade in Moscow. So most of my family still
wow.
speaks Russian, and I actually majored in Russian at the academy and got myself posted to Alaska. Uh, something I deeply regretted later.
I bet. I bet. It was. I'd never thought about the cost at that point. I more thought about the consequences at that point. To think that we were at that close of the brink of total destruction. I mean, because that's what would have happened, dude. I mean, you
Mm.
think about that. Think about how close it came. Go back to the history of the Cuban Missile Crisis and how close it came to that, and how many times that those sort of things. I mean, literally, the dude. It was that close. A finger on the button sort of thing of mutually assured destruction.
Mm.
That to me, I had no clue about budget and monetary costs and things like that. It was more of the wow, okay, nuclear holocaust, sort of thing. Uh, but yeah, that was probably really where it started. Uh, and I went into Dad's office one evening at home, his home office, and told him I wanted to join the Air Force and fly fighter jets. Dad, to add to the origin or the catalyst, that's the word I was looking for. To add to the catalyst of me making that decision was, well, Dad was a aerospace engineer, working in the General Dynamics, then now Lockheed Martin plant building. Dad was designing the F-16,
Oh, wow.
and which was being built on the other side of the airfield from the B-52s. So you had the factory on one side of the airfield building designing and building the first F-16s, and then the B-52s and other F-111s and things like that on the other side of the airfield. And that's what I told Dad I wanted to fly fighter jets. And he said, well, son, the harsh reality is you wear glasses.
Yep.
And if you wear glasses, you can't be a pilot. And if you can't be a pilot, you do not want to be in the Air Force.
My dad said the same thing.
Really?
Yeah, I almost went to the Air Force Academy. I wanted to be a little bit different, but yeah, I wore glasses. So like, why?
Yeah, exactly. So I at some point, I guess I just said, well, screw it, then I'll just join the Army. And I really don't remember anything other than, okay, I'll join the Army then. And that's what drove me to go into Texas A&M. I looked at West Point, but I never considered it as an option. I considered the only two universities I considered was Penn State and Texas A&M. And I went to Texas A&M for the sole purpose of being in the Corps of Cadets and receiving a commission into the Army. While I was there, I enlisted in the Texas Army National Guard because I wanted to see what life was like as a soldier before I became an officer. So I was a tank driver for about a year and a half, / tank driver, commander, crew member, all those sort of things. Worked my way up to tank commander before I transitioned to what was then LRSU. They don't have those anymore, but long range reconnaissance surveillance units, which is basically the recce team for the armored division.
Do they have like Sheridans, like the light tanks?
No, you had your feet. You were the
man.
You were the only guys in the division that were, hardcore deep infantry, infiltrate the enemy lines and set up hide sites and, OP positions way deep in the enemy territory to radio back indicators of what's coming, which was a great experience. Man, I loved that. I was a fire team leader in that unit for a little over a year before I received my commission. But unbelievable experience working with some great NCOs, a couple of them Vietnam vets, really learning getting the field craft understanding very early on in my life. Got commissioned as an engineer, much to my chagrin. I always like to say, because all I ever wanted to be was an infantry officer. And the Army said, we don't need you to be an infantry officer. We need you to be an engineer. So did my first tour with my brand new Texas bride up in Alaska. I don't regret my Alaska tour.
You must have been at Richardson.
No,
you were at Wainwright. Oh my goodness. Me too.
I was at Wainwright,
still missing a toe and a half if you find it up there.
Yeah. No. So did they still do the what they call it, AIT, Arctic Indoctrination Training?
Yeah,
or something like that?
They call it, I think, like cold weather survival. They do it up at like Granite Hills.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an hour and a half, 2 hours out of Wainwright.
So I'm sure the layout of the base has changed. It's in some point, but so we lived on base in these eightplexes. They're like townhomes, so it was 3 stories basement and then up to the second story.
They're still there.
And okay, well, that was where we lived, and we were only maybe a 200-yard straight walk, not following the street, straight walk to the O Club. And
Nice.
between where our house was and the O Club was a field. And in that field was where we did at that time, our indoctrination training. We had to spend 4 hours at 20 below outside in just the sleeping bag. And we
Yep.
literally did our overnight sleep right there, 100 yards from my house.
And then went to the O Club, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, no, it was the middle of the night when they got us up at 4 o'clock or whatever it was, because you only had to do 4 hours. But yeah, I did. Yeah, that was back when the O Club was the O Club. I mean, it was every officer became a member, and every Friday night was the hors d'oeuvres, the free hors d'oeuvres, and happy hour drinks, and everybody in the battalion was there. And if you weren't in the field or on leave, you were expected to be there. I mean, that was old school,
Oh wow,
old
that's hardcore.
school O Club stuff. Officers' wives clubs and tea parties and all that kind of crap was still going on. Yeah, and that was the Alaska experience as an engineer was amazing, and just living up there was amazing. I came back with all 10 of my fingers and all 10 of my toes.
Lucky.
Uh, yeah, fortunately. Uh, and yeah, because it is fortunate, because we had a couple of exercises. Brimfrost is what the winter exercise used to be called. Where, as an engineer, the irony I always thought, and I still do to this day, even knowing what I know about bigger Army, the irony was that my platoon, I had the assault and barrier platoon, which is the only engineer equipment in a light infantry division at the time. My platoon went to the field a week before the logistics people did, because we had to start opening up the roads, clearing the snow off the roads, so the logistics people could go and set up their tents and all their supply stuff and get that all set up. Then the next week was the exercise. So the infantry, the field artillery, all those guys would come up, set up, do their 4-day FTX, and then they would leave. Then the log guys would leave 4 or 5 days after that, and then 4 or 5 days after that, we'd leave. So for a 4-day exercise,
Oh
we
my
were in the
God,
field.
like a month
We
in
were
the
in the
field
Yep, for a four
and
day
no hot food
exercise.
for half of it.
Uh, yeah, probably that's probably about right. Frozen MREs. But I can tell you what, the ingenuity of the American soldier and a Yukon stove. And folks that don't know what a Yukon stove is, basically a rectangular prism that's what, maybe 36 inches, if that, 36 by 12 cubed, I think. So 12 by 12 and 36 inch long, that you supposed to burn diesel fuel in. Diesel fuel is, back then it burned really dirty. I'm sure now it's a little bit cleaner. So we always got JP8 from the
Oh,
aviators.
nice.
So, because it burns hotter, so it's more efficient and cleaner. So we were green back then, right? I mean,
Hey,
right?
there you go.
uh, but yeah, I mean, the things I learned about Yukon toast. Did y'all make Yukon toast?
We didn't, but I mean, how gravelly was your voice before you cooked all your food with jet
Oh,
fuel?
that's a good question.
No, I took like I had a jet boil, and we had like within the strikers, you have this like inside stove element that's meant to boil water. And so between that and a little jet boil, we cooked up some pretty good stuff and had constant coffee coming.
Oh man, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah, we had that in we had the potbelly stoves that we ran in the headquarter tents, and they were really like a little mini keg, is what they looked like. that same thing. It's just a different shape, not quite as efficient as the Yukon. Uh, so yeah, that we always kept coffee on top of that going, and did a lot of hobo coffee when I was an engineer because we hadn't quite figured out the whole percolator thing. So we would be out there with a pot of coffee, and you dump grounds in it, and you boil it until the coffee sinks to the bottom, and then you pour the coffee off the top, and then
Nice.
until the grounds sink to
Don't
the bottom.
don't judge me. I'm a bit of a coffee snob. I brought out like a French press and a lot of coffee, man. I was sitting there in the striker just making French press coffee. Like I'm kind of embarrassed now with that story, like telling you about it, but it is what it is.
Well, if we had known of such a thing, we probably would have done it because it's not like I mean I was an engineer. I mean I had my own Cuckvy. My platoon sergeant had his own Cuckvy Chevy Blazer. We had 5-ton trucks, deuce and a halfs, tractor trailers. We had, not like we didn't have room to bring the stuff, just didn't know about it. So it was like, yeah, we'll just make coffee in a pot on the Yukon stove. So yeah,
Nice.
we did not have creature comforts, but we were never uncomfortable. Is I think a good way of putting it. Uh, yeah, a lot of great experience in the military, and I mean, frankly, even hunting and fishing up there is. I always said that when you step out of the truck into the uh, Yukon territory to hunt caribou, you are part of the food chain.
Mm.
Them grizzly bears out there, yeah, you don't want to screw that up. I mean, everybody carried a 44 mag on their hip, just on that chance that you had that one of those encounters. So yeah, it was quite the experience. That's where I raised my hand to volunteer for SF and became a Green Beret. And that's where I spent the rest of my career as a Green Beret. Still doing cold weather stuff.
Mm.
That's what the 10th Special Forces Group does, focus on mountainous terrain and cold weather operations. And yeah, that's what brought us out here to Colorado. And some great experiences and deployments there that challenging and rewarding at the same time. Frustrations of not being able to accomplish the mission you're given, but then figuring out how to get the mission accomplished anyways.
Mm.
Building to quote good old President Bush, a coalition of the willing
I
with
remember
us.
that.
Yeah, I did a lot of that because, as an SF guy, you're out there alone and unafraid. So unless you build a tribe around you of people that like you build a relationship with, and then convince them that, hey, we really ought to work on this, or you can really help me out with this or that, or by doing this, you can get a lot done. And
Mm.
we invoked, for those of you who have never seen the movie The Green Berets, there's a character in that movie that's on the primary team, and his name is Peterson. Well, Peterson, but the little Vietnamese kid calls him Peterson. And Sergeant Peterson is a special forces engineer and knows how to get things done, knows how to get the things that the team needs in order to be successful. Well, we invoked our inner Sergeant Peterson in when we were in Haiti because we were ill-equipped and did not have command support to get what we needed because of the structure and our mission and things like that. So it's amazing what you can get done when you act like you know what you're doing.
Mm.
Great life lesson. I'm not advocating stealing, but I am advocating for, hey, you're not using that. Yeah, and then, yes, if you were to give it to me, then now you would only have 3 instead of 4, sort of thing. But if I was to sign for that, then you would have a record of still having 4, and I would just be holding one of those things. And some
Nice.
things like that. We'll call it
If you need something
negotiation.
actually stolen though, you ask a specialist.
Yes, I had those guys.
You always have at
Yes.
least one or two in every
Oh,
unit.
yeah, you're talking about the Spec 4 Mafia. Yes.
Yeah, the E4
I had
Mafia.
yes, I had some NCOs who had some very good skills to get things done. Also in that category of, we'll just leave it at class 4 supplies. So yes, that was a great experience, though, truthfully, because I used that later on after retiring from the Army in civilian life.
I'm
Not the stealing, but the acting like I know what I'm doing.
good
Right? I may
clarification.
not. Yeah, yeah. I may not know what I'm doing, but if I show up and demonstrate confidence, uh, and yes, this is how it's going to be, and this is how it works, and this is what we need, and this is why we need it, with authority, authenticity, and confidence, then people believe you.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Jesse Itzler. Are you familiar with Jesse Itzler?
No.
Uh, Jesse's a self-made millionaire. He uh, his his big claim to fame early on was he was a rapper that sold his the walkout song that I think is still played to the New York Knicks.
Hmm.
He wrote it and sold it to the Knicks, and it's still like played when they come out. It's like their theme song. And he went on to do a private jet uh, share ownership thing.
Marquis is dead.
Uh,
Looks like.
yes, Marquis Air. That's it. Married Sarah Blakely, the Spanx lady.
Huh.
But
Wow. That's an
Jesse
entrepreneurial
Itzler,
family.
yeah. Oh my goodness, it really is. When he gives his keynotes, he talks about these sort of things in a different sort of way. Doesn't I don't think he explains it quite well enough in the acting with authority. He almost makes it sound like he lied, but it was okay that he was lying because he had authority. You know, he believed it would happen, sort of thing. Like saying,
Hmm.
"Well, I've got these 6 jets," and he didn't have 6 jets. But it's the same principle of well, here's what I'm going to do for you. We're going to do
Hmm.
this, and that sort of principle. Boy, I got way off track on that, didn't
No,
I?
it's all right. Before we move on to the civilian transition part, I'm curious. You were like 16 years in the Army by the time, or 17 years by the time 2001, 9/11 rolled around. What was it like
No,
being
wrong map. It wasn't. God, was it? Yeah, I guess it technically was from when I enlisted.
Ah,
Yeah,
I did go to West Point. I can't do basic
yeah,
addition and subtraction. So
yeah. Okay,
you were
yeah.
probably at that point, you're probably like a senior level in SF, right? Like
I
a
was a
detachment
major.
commander or something. Okay.
I was a major at the time, so I was a company commander. Actually, when 9/11 happened, I was the battalion S3
Hmm.
when 9/11
What
happened.
was
So
what was that like? Like, because I imagine as soon as that happened, I'm guessing the SF community knew, okay, like it's gotten real now.
yeah, in the weird thing, because I had been through other iterations of deployments and not deployments, and what I mean is, hey, tell your family goodbye. You're leaving tomorrow, and then
Wow.
call the wife up and say, "Hey, I'm coming home for dinner tonight," right? Sort of thing. Where there was a couple of times where I did that deploy, and this is pre 9/11, by the way. So when 9/11 happened, we went right back into the same sort of iteration of, all right, man, we got to do something, and we would do something, and we would, we were pulling out maps, or the intel guys are digging stuff up, or we're putting together what if plans and about this and what's a packing list, and where the teams are all, because I wasn't on a team at the time, nor did I had just given up. Let me see, doing the math. Yeah, I had just given up my company a few weeks, probably a month before. Had a change of command, and so we were really doing stuff that we felt like we should be doing in preparation for the phone call to go.
Hmm.
And the irony of it was, is we, even though we were the ones who had been training in mountains, in the weird sort of way of the special forces groups are oriented towards regions. And I shouldn't say weird. It's just the way it is. I mean, somebody decided, I think it's a great model. Afghanistan was not our region. Our region was basically Western Russia all the way into Europe, and at the time it was still Africa.
Hmm.
So Afghanistan is farther east, and in a weird swathing Southwest Asia way, which is Fifth Special Forces Group. So
And
Fifth Special
I think
Forces.
fifth is now in like Latin America, right?
No,
I think they.
it's still,
Okay.
as far as I know, it's still seventh group.
Okay.
Seventh group has always been in Latin America. Uh, but Fifth Special Forces Group got the phone call.
Hmm.
So they were the ones deployed. And the way I felt, this is all Otis perspective, right? The way I felt like there was some salt being rubbed in the wound, because we were getting phone calls from our brethren out at Fort Campbell in Fifth Special Forces Group. Hey, what kind of cold weather gear do you use? Hey,
Oh
what do
man.
you take with you for mountains? Hey, what's the best altimeter that you have? Hey, in this kind of high altitude, cold weather environment, we're like,
That must be so annoying.
oh, we were from the group commander down. We honestly believed that we were going to get a phone call. We really, really did. You know, the boys in fifth group got it, and did an amazing job of executing those first few days and months of the operation. But yeah, we honestly thought we were going to get that phone call, and yeah, that's the disadvantage to the operational area. You know, if the Soviet Union had freaking invaded, bastards, instead of falling apart, we would have gotten the call.
Yeah, and then I'm like one thing that my granddad did was he stole bridge plans because he was an engineer as well. The Russians, in order to solve the problem of invading Europe, they have to counteract all the rivers. And so they had these floating pontoon bridges that they had developed that were pretty neat. And so my granddad actually stole those plans and couldn't go back to Russia afterwards. So there's the engineer and Russia connection.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome that you did that. Yeah, I'm sure there's a million of those sort of little stories in the Cold War, things like that.
Mm.
Uh, but yeah, that's so what I ended up doing uh, in our 9/11 fight. Again, it's just a strange. I think it was more of a throw them a bone and give them something to do. Was we went to the Republic of Georgia, which was getting invaded by Russia at the time, in various sense. And then there was some uprising, very, very similar situation to what's happened in Ukraine a couple of years ago and is still happening now. Was happening in Georgia. There was territories of Georgia that were, uprising. They didn't want to be part of the Georgian Republic that wanted to be part of Russia. Interestingly enough,
Mm.
those
Very
areas
close.
around the oil, yes, those areas around the oil and mineral-rich areas of Georgia.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, so that became the 10th group mission right after 9/11 was to what do we call it? We were the GTEP. It was GTEP, Georgia Training and Equip Program. So doing some training, and I did a little bit of that setup and getting the foundation off the ground and getting that going was, yeah, that was my big war effort. Then the my destiny to do the warrior test continued to disappear for me because I shifted. I had to PCS. My time was done in group. They said, no more fun for you. You've got to leave. And I said, all right. I don't want to go to Bragg. I don't want to go to McDill. I don't want to go to DC. Where can I go? And I got a lot of, you don't get a choice. And then I found out, actually it was, I attribute it to my then group commander, Charlie Cleveland, because he got a phone call from what was then the original Spacecom at Peterson Air Force Base, that there were, in this entire Joint Command, there were 2 Green Beret positions. And one of them had been unfilled for 3 years, and the other one was about to be unfilled. And my boss got me and my hunting partner into those 2 positions because neither one of us wanted to PCS. So we show up to Spacecom, and at Spacecom, I get there, and the main reason we were there, both of us were there, is neither one of us wanted to PCS. And we both went to different divisions in the J structure. And both of our bosses told us that we were moving to Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. And both of us were like, no, we're not.
Nope.
And then after that happened, after I told them no, then I got put on a pretty cool experiment for GPS and Blue Force trackers on the classified side. And then the Iraq War was about to kick off, and they were pulling together the units to deploy, and 5th Special Forces Group was coming in from the south, and 10th Special Forces Group was coming in from the north. Well, each of those task force were allocated a Space Force LNO.
Nice.
So, yes, almost. My hunting buddy, yes, the Otis sad story of just missing out. My hunting buddy gets assigned to the 5th Special Forces Group as their Space LNO. Yeah, like that's a joke, right? I mean, neither one of us knew how to spell space, let alone be a Space LNO. I am by name requested by the 10th Special Forces Group to be their Space LNO as part of their task force. Then my buddy Ken Tovo is now the group commander. And my boss said that I was too critical for the current experiment that was going on, that he couldn't afford to lose me. So he sent another guy in our shop, an Air Force guy, to go with them. And
did he just not like you or something?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Damn. That stings all the way over here, man.
Oh yeah. I was in Korea doing this Blue Force tracker experiment demonstration in Korea when the invasion happened, and I got to watch it on a computer screen because I was doing all this. If you know, Blue Force trackers, the little beacons that guys carry around. I got to watch all the guys go in and see where they were on the map, which didn't help with my attitude. Yeah. So yeah, that was frustrating. And then I dodged. I mentioned dodging the Offutt Air Force Base bullet by tapping into another SF network and getting assigned to the help stand up Northcom, because at the time the brand new, newly assigned Northcom chief of staff was a 1-star National Guard SF guy, and I found out that he was holding an officer's call at the Peterson Air Force Base Oak Club, and I went there that night, crashed the party, and went straight to the general and said, "Hey, boss, got a second? Can I buy you a beer?" And bought the general a beer. Told him my sad story of them wanting me to move to Offutt, and it was bullshit, and all these sort of things. He goes, "You know what, Otis? You're right." He goes, "Hey, J1!" Yells across the bar, "J1, come here!" Calls the J1 over, Air Force colonel, and he just looks pissed off and sad. Literally, he's just one of those guys. I think he was probably living a sad life at that point. And the general goes, "Write down his name and get him assigned to Northcom ASAP."
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the stuff goes around and kind of evens out, and then I spent a couple of years there, helped stand that up. Then went over to Sakyr, and at Sakyr, it was my first time to finally get into the box, because I had a boss who was very generous and understanding, and I had a friend who was running a program out of Balad and played the system. He put a by name request in. My boss approved the by name request, and I finally got to see what Iraq was at the time and spend some time there. And then got to stand up the NATO Special Operations Command with my good friend and former boss, Admiral McRaven, and a lot of really top-notch guys that we pulled together to put that organization together. And then I always remember kind of my final OER counseling with Admiral McRaven. He says, "So what, Otis, what do you want to do, in the next year?" Because he was PCSing. I said, "Well, sir, I'm probably just going to retire out of Germany here because I'll hit 20 next year, and I don't really have anything else I want to do in the Army." And he said, "Well, you sure you want to retire out of Germany? I heard that's really difficult to retire from overseas and stuff like that." And I said, "Well, yeah, sir, it is, but I want to get back to Colorado Springs, and I can't get anybody to, get me an assignment there." So he says, "Well, give me 2 weeks, Otis. Well, we'll see what we can do." Well, 5 days later, I get a call from the branch assignments guy that a position at Northcom had magically just opened up again.
Nice.
So yeah. So came back here to Northcom and did my retired on active duty tour, my 1 year tour, and then retired and separated. And that was the way I like to put it. That was where my life plan and goals had ended, because I knew what I wanted to do in the Army, but after the Army, I thought all I needed was a job. And didn't, the one thing that we all have in uniform, no matter what service it is, it's your oath of office to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you're surrounded with every other dude that's there is there for the same reason. And that's a powerful powerful place to be. And when you step away from that, you lose your purpose, and you lose your organization, your team, your tribe,
AKA your tribe.
Now,
I was just going to say.
Yep. And now you are on your own, and you're not really, but that's the way you feel like, is that you are on your own. It is this lost feeling. Anybody in we'll get to one of the things that I do to mitigate this now. But anybody that believes that they will get satisfaction through a job, aka a paycheck, will never be satisfied and will never be fulfilled. The paycheck, money in your bank account, does not denote happiness, understanding of who you are, and fulfilling your purpose is where happiness comes. And the two are not mutually exclusive, but you can't find happiness nor purpose in a bank account. You got to find your purpose first, and then your purpose can help put money in your bank account if you're lucky, or your bank account can be used to help fulfill your purpose. And because I did not understand that when I retired, I just took a job with a great company, the same company my dad had worked for years. He was actually pretty excited that I was being hired by Lockheed Martin. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. It's exactly what I wanted. It's a very military-like organization. It'll be a great transition. This is what I'm going to do for the next 25 years until I retire. I'll get a great retirement program from them. All these sort of things were rolling around in my head. But I was clueless in the fact of what I was doing in that role. I say those parts and pieces because none of the companies, and I worked for 5 different companies in those 7 years. None of those companies were at fault. None of those companies are bad or dysfunctional or toxic, whatever bad label you want to put on. The problem was I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And because I didn't know what I wanted to do, all I cared about was where's the next dollar, and how do I grind this out to make more money? Can I take more vacation yet? Because I didn't like what I was doing. So it became a grind. It became all right, sure, shit, I'll figure this out. I'll just go do it. And, that's draining. That is mentally, it starts off mentally draining and becomes physically draining. And that was what I did for 7 years. I worked for 5 different companies. And each one of those companies, when I started, I told myself and my boss or the owner, depending on which role it was, that this is what I plan to do for the next 15, 20, 25 years until I retire.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. And I truly believe that on each one of them. And each one of them at about the 90-day mark is when I started getting this, something ain't right here. I don't know what it is, why it is, but it no longer feels comfortable to me. You know, the drive into work all of a sudden took longer. The drive home took longer. The walk up the stairs was heavier. The chair was less comfortable. You name it. The things that my boss said were stupider. The guy next door to me in my office chewed his food too loud. The coffee tasted like crap. I mean, all these sort of things, these made up things that all of a sudden start to come to fruition because of the frustrations I was having in that role. And that led me to doing, fortunately, something I thought I would never do, but I was taught this by 2 of my former NCOs I was smart enough to hire into Northcom as GS guys. And that is the fact that you can quit and you can say no. And those 2 things, I truly look back on those 2 life lessons as the most important lessons that anybody can learn and apply when they take the uniform off. You can say no to your boss on anything that they tell you to do, and you don't have to do it, and you don't have to worry about UCMJ because there is no such thing as a lawful order outside of the uniform. If you do not want to do it, if you do not want to travel, if you do not want to go to lunch, if you do not want to show up the next day, I don't care what it is, You can say no. There might be consequences. You might get fired, might lose your job, but you know what? If you don't want to do it, don't freaking do it.
Yeah,
Plain and
you're not going
simple.
to be thrown in jail.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to be home next week because it's your daughter's 16th birthday, and oh, by the way, while you're in the military, you missed over half of those first 15 birthdays or more, or every one of them. And this is the first one you're going to be there for, and it's her 16th. And your boss said, "Hey, we got this conference that we need you to go to next week." No, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Yeah, plain and simple. So
But,
that's number one. Go ahead.
yeah, it's like, I think the data is something like 2.5 jobs typically for veterans as they're transitioning before they kind of figure out kind of what they wanted to do. It sounds like you had a little bit more of that, like 7 years of kind of dissatisfaction with what you were doing. Did that
Mhm.
have an effect on you, like personally, or on your home life, or did you just kind of keep that contained?
No, I skipped over a role in the Army that taught me that there's no such thing as a work-life balance. It's all life. Uh, I After I was a team leader, I had a job in DC in an organization that was dysfunctional with no mission. I was up here as a special forces detachment commander, and I went to this completely dysfunctional organization. Uh, that you talk about a waste of money. That was a waste of money and oxygen. Uh, and that role, those 2 years, uh, taught me that there is no separation, no such thing as work life balance. Because as hard as I tried to contain the distaste and frustration in that role, it still carried over into the home life.
Mm.
There's no magic cleansing threshold. And at the time, I also didn't have as much of an understanding of mindfulness and self awareness to help me with that, also. But it was bad enough in that role that I pursued uh, how I could resign my commission and get out of the military.
Oh,
Uh, it
wow.
was it was that frustrating of a role. But fortunately, my beautiful Texas bride and her un, unknowing beautiful wisdom said to me one evening as I was talking about getting out of the Army. She said, "Well, why don't we just see if we can get back to Colorado and you can get back to group?"
Mm.
And damn, she nailed it.
No.
uh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
you, you,
back to those organizations. I had that frustration, uh, and I carried it. I took care of it. I noticed one of the ways I took care of that frustration in these roles back into the civilian life was through coaching rugby. Uh,
mm,
because so now I'm leaving the frustrating office, doing something that I really loved and gave me. I was a huge passion of mine at the time. Uh, that eventually helped me discover my purpose. But it was this huge passion that I had for the game, and really it was the boys and what I was doing. And because I had that 2 hours in there of leave the office, 2 hours of rugby, go home, there was this
mm,
cleansing period in those 2 hours to where I that brought me back up because I was
mm,
counterbalancing the frustrations of the office with, hey, as long as I'm standing out there on the practice field with 25, 30 high school boys that are just excited to be there and want to work hard, uh, and I get to work with these young men and help shape them, that helped change my outlook on things.
yeah, with kind of maybe like a mini purpose, like you were giving back in a way and like connecting again with the tribe.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I refer to it as a passion, because passions are part of your purpose. So if you understand, I'll walk you through an exercise. to share with your listeners for discovering your purpose. You take your passions, and passions are things that when you're doing them, they excite you, they fulfill you, you lose track of time. You no longer care how long it takes you. And when you're completed, you're like, oh, that's it? I'm done already? Shit, let's go do it again. That's passion, because it's like, it's energy filling. Now, the difference between passion and purpose is passions don't last as long. They're more time tied. And also a little bit more in specificity, like whitewater kayaking, rock climbing. Those were passions of mine at the time, So those are passions, and passions your hobbies can be passions. The things that you do to help others can be passions. Volunteering for a certain organization can be passion. But the way that you discover your purpose through your passions is you take at least 3, preferably 5 passions, and you take them and you get a blank piece of paper and you write down that passion on the top of that piece of paper. And then you take that passion, that activity, that thing that it is, and you break it down into 3 to 5 parts. At least 3, no more than 5. What are the major components? Your definition. If I said, give me 3 things about doing a podcast that excites you about it, those are the 3 things. Boom, boom, boom. You
and
write
maybe look
those
for the
down.
commonalities. Are you looking for like the commonalities of where they match up?
Did you get in trouble a lot in class at West Point for not staying with the teacher, trying to get ahead?
I graduated with a 2.7 GPA. I figured that as long as I got that damn ring, nobody was going to ask me about it, and I did the bare minimum.
There you go. 2-0 and go, man. Right there, brother.
Yeah.
Yep. But no, that's exactly what you do. So you take each of those passions, you do the same thing for each of them. And then once you've done that, I want you to take them and I want you to put them on a table. So passion, list the 3 components, passion, 3 to 5 components, and each one on a table. Now you're seeing the big picture of who you are, and you see the commonality. You will see that linkage between each passion, besides it being you, being the linkage, but there is a commonality, as you put it, a linkage between your passions, which can guide you to the discovery and clarity of your purpose.
So I think I'm going to become a sex worker based on this conversation.
Yeah.
So I think that's
okay. Okay. There's money in that, apparently. OnlyFans and things like that. Yeah. Okay.
I wonder what the market for like partial toe amputees is. Maybe that's a thing, like to really niche fetish. But maybe
there's probably some weirdos out there. Every so often you hear about some. You never know if they're true, but like some daughter that took a picture of her mom's feet and posted it on OnlyFans, and the picture made like $10,000 or something.
Yeah, it's super depressing. I'm just not even looking at those stories. It's like, what am I doing with my life? And I think that's so valuable, though, that exercise. And we don't do that. Like, there's nothing in the transition programs in the Army or in the military that I know of that covers that, right? They tell you maybe how to find a job, but that's basically all it is. They don't talk about purpose. They don't talk about tribe. They don't talk about identity. And those are such fundamental things.
Yep, 100%. And those are some of the things that I teach to the guys I work with when I work with the guys through the Commit Foundation and the Honor Foundation, both of those organizations. There's more to it than just getting the really cool job at the Milwaukee Bucks,
for sure.
or some executive role in a unicorn-esque business. Well, okay, but I'll in reflection. So I mentioned how rugby was a cleansing period. Those training sessions for rugby was a cleansing period. It was also And I didn't realize it at the time. What was driving me to do what I was doing? It was allowing me. I mean, I even use this statement. I would tell people that the only reason I work is to put money in my bank account so that I could coach rugby. I would
Hmm.
tell people that. I didn't realize what that meant. And the reason I use that as an example is the fact that your purpose does not have to put money in your bank account.
Yeah.
Your your day job, your 8 to 5 job can be the thing that provides you the capital flexibility to do and fulfill your purpose. So
Hmm.
don't feel like I need to find I need to understand my purpose so I can get a job that fulfills my purpose. That's not what life's about. You need to have a job to put a roof over your head, put food on your table, take care of your family. That's why you need to have a job. You need to have clarity and purpose so that you know who you are, so that you can live happy and fulfilled and be a better person in that job, with that family, with your friends, in your tribe. That's what it's about. That's
Hmm.
where the power lies. It's not this, you know, chase the next paycheck. It's not the, well, I'm going to quit this job because it doesn't fulfill my purpose. Really, do you really understand what your purpose is? Because if you truly understand
Yeah.
what your purpose is, then you know that the thing that's putting money in your bank account may not
Just
be your
making that
purpose,
happen.
but it can enable you to fulfill your purpose. I'll
So
share with you.
like
Yeah, go
passions
ahead.
that you have can indicate that direction, and also maybe what you're spending your money to do can also be an indication.
Exactly. I turned down jobs when in those 7 years. I had probably 3 or 4 companies that had offered me jobs that were higher paying, but I turned them down because they didn't afford me the flexibility to show up at the office at 6:30 in the morning to get my 8 hours in by 3:30 in the afternoon, 15:30 in the afternoon, actually more like 2:30, 3 o'clock, uh, so that I could leave the office to be at the practice field at 3:30.
Hmm.
I literally used that as a screening measure for jobs. Again, all I was doing was collecting a paycheck to help me pursue something I was extremely passionate about at the time. I didn't understand that was driving me, leading me towards my purpose of coaching, mentoring, and guiding, creating a legacy of leaders so that others can have more success. I didn't understand that at the time, didn't have that clarity, but I was living it. And those roles, those companies I worked for, were affording me that opportunity to do that.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a lot that's going to resonate with a lot of people in terms of, starting that process of finding that. And I think sometimes it takes a while to tease that out, because I think sometimes people leave the military and they don't really have a guiding purpose outside of what they were serving. And so sometimes you have to experiment a little to find that out. Like my first job was a value stream manager in a filter producing plant for the oil industry. It was the most boring thing I've ever done in my entire life, and I hated it. And I was going through a really rough transition time because I'd gotten out 3 years of my service commitment, was learning how to walk again. So I ended up dancing salsa and became incredibly addicted to it. So I'd get off work and I'd go dance salsa for like 8 hours and then like wake up a couple hours of sleep and just do it again. And so the next job that I found after that, because I was too much of an alcoholic and got fired and also wasn't good at it, I went into sales because that allowed me the flexibility to go dance when I wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's exactly it. And the other thing I was going to share with you uh, is a Japanese philosophy called ikigai.
Yes, I
Uh,
was gonna. Yeah, I was
yeah,
thinking of that.
yeah, ikigai, and the world would be a better place if everybody lived in pursuit of their ikigai. We can't all live in our ikigai, but we should pursue it. And ikigai simply is a 4 circle Venn diagram.
Mm.
Uh, Circle number one is something you're good at. And the reason it's something you're good at is because there's things that we're good at that we don't necessarily like doing, or maybe not that excited to do it because, it's just one of those things I'm good at, right? Uh, so that's circle number one, top left, the way I always like to do it. Circle number two, top right, is something you love to do. There's a lot of things that, and I always have a hard time because somebody will say, "Well, what about you, Otis? What is that?" I'm like, I don't know. There's probably a lot of things that I love to do that I'm not very good at, and I don't really realize it. But singing or playing an instrument publicly always comes to mind. I can't do either one of those,
Nice.
and I don't love to do either one, so don't have to worry about that happening. But that's a great example, right? How many people do you know that love to get up and do karaoke, and you're like, oh, earplugs, right?
Yep.
Love to do it, but ain't very good at it, whether they know it or not. So those are the top two circles. The bottom two circles are bottom left is what does the world need? Does the world need more karaoke singers? I don't think so. So what does the world need? And then the bottom right is what will people pay you for?
Mm.
You take all four of those circles, you bring them together, and that little sliver in the middle where they all four overlap, and there's more details and where they overlap in the different places and spread out and stuff like that. But that's the gist of it. Where those four circles overlap, that is your ikigai. It's something I'm good at. It's something I love to do. It's what the world needs, and somebody will pay me to do it. That's pretty freaking cool. I mean,
Yeah, and sometimes that isn't like an instant transition, meaning that sometimes you have to take a longer term view, I feel. Meaning you may have
mhm.
to work a job or two that you don't necessarily like to get some skills to get closer to that point. So it may be useful to do that because you need it to get a job, work on your passions, uh, analyze, is this working for me, and where do I want to end up, and use exercises like the purpose exercise you did and also the ikigai to guide you in your life path, more or less.
Yeah, and it's experiment. I've, I'm a believer in the statement, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And in the
Yeah.
broader sense of that, uh, and I've had this discussion with many people about the Bible and other books, but you read Bible is just a great reference because I mean people have read the Bible and they read it and they're like, huh. And then they'll read that same book or chapter or verse and they'll go, oh, God just spoke to me. And maybe he did. But you know what? The beauty of it is you're a different person reading that same word.
Mm.
Uh, there's a great Stoic quote by Heraclitus that states, "No man can ever step in the same river twice, for he is no longer the same man, and it is no longer the same river." And as we go throughout the day, you and I can have this exact same conversation tomorrow. You will ask different questions, and I will tell the stories differently because I will
Yep.
be a different person tomorrow.
And some
And
enterprising engineer will put a floating pontoon bridge over the river.
yeah, yep, exactly. So, yeah, there's, I think to touch on the point that you were making is some people will have clarity in their purpose soon, immediately. Some people have to have trial and error, have to say, I think this is it, and let me walk down this path. The beauty of it is when you are in pursuit of the clarity, you are living your life in intention for yourself to
Yes.
serve others, as opposed to just going through the motions. Would you rather take the risk and step onto a path that you think leads to your purpose, or would you rather sit and wait until someone builds a golden path for you that
Yeah.
and tells you what your
If they
purpose
do
is?
that, it becomes a toll road. Somebody else is charging you to take it. You know,
Yep.
I I think there's like in the healing, because I'm working with a lot of traditional plant medicine based healing methodologies here. The concept goes, like having patience for yourself along all
Mhm.
processes. And so I think that a lot of what affects veterans is you kind of want to get out and you want to find all that stuff immediately and kind of hit it right first time. And that basically never happens unless you're just super lucky, but I haven't heard of it happening. And so I think that veterans would be well suited to have more patience with themselves along that process and realize it's a bit more of experimentation than it is kind of, knocking out of the park on the first swing.
Hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm a great example. 7 years. I didn't even know what the
Yeah.
purpose was, uh, but even when I made that transition, so at that 7 year mark, I can't say that I said, here's my legacy. My legacy is to create a legacy of leaders, or I'm sorry, my purpose is to create a legacy of leaders. I didn't understand that at that 7th year, but I understood what I was doing wasn't what I was supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. When did you, because this is something I face a lot. I mean, there's this sense among a lot of veterans that meditation and mindfulness and these more spiritual things are kind of gay. They don't want to do it. Don't want to talk about it. They don't want to experiment with it. Interestingly enough, now the VA and SF is actually getting a lot into breathwork and meditation. But how did you find breathwork, meditation, mindfulness?
How did I find it, or what drove me to start doing it? Those two different things. How did I find it? I
That's a
found
good
it.
question. It sounds like what drove you is probably a better question.
Yeah, yeah. What drove me was because I believe the exact same thing you do. You just stated that it's this woo woo touchy feely bullshit. Uh, what I became gained an understanding of was that I was training my brain by doing meditation. I was training my brain to focus.
Mm.
And if I train my physical body, my muscles by doing PT every morning, then shouldn't I train the most important muscle that I've got, my brain, because that controls everything else that I do, so that I can focus? If I'm training my brain to focus on a single task, and then I'm dedicating my entire mental capacity into that task. And what better way to get the best outcome than to dedicate the entire capacity of your mind into that task, as opposed to the 17,000 tabs that are open that I've got my Amazon wish list, my Facebook marketplace, my email, my other email, my LinkedIn, my Twitter, and I'm working on a presentation for the next speech, and all these
Mm.
sort of things at once. Well, that's half-assing it, because it's the joke that we talk about with officers. You're a mile wide and an inch deep, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what the military wants you to be. They don't want an officer who is a master of weapons. They don't want an officer who is a master of medical operations or whatever. Although now that I say that, really, what the military really wants is officers who can be a master of leadership and a master of putting plans together to solve problems.
And PowerPoint.
Yes, well, PowerPoint is your communication skill. That is your art. I mean, we joke about it, but really, what do you use PowerPoint for? To communicate
Yeah.
your what
Communication.
you want to accomplish. Yeah, I mean, we
Mm.
joke about it. That's really what it is, though. Yeah, where were we on that?
Probably moving towards
Uh,
how and why you created task or tribe and purpose.
yeah. So a little bit deeper, when I was still doing government contracting stuff, when I quit, I would consult. And
Mm.
the first time I started consulting, I needed a company name. And my wife and I were like, gosh, I don't know. And I said, well, one night I was sitting there. I said, well, what about, why don't we just call it LTO? LTO. And I think actually she said LTO. And I said, well, what the hell is LTO? She says, listen to Otis. I said, I can't have a company named that. And I was like, wait a second, I can. Leadership, training, and operations. And then you put
Nice.
enterprises after it, and it becomes this
Oh yeah,
big,
that makes it
powerful
fancy.
organization. Yeah, LTO Enterprises. Boom, man, it's a powerful organization. That's what I did. I consulted. That was just me as a consultant. Uh, and then about 2 years into my executive coaching, after I'd taken LTO Enterprises consulting business and pivoted into executive coaching and leadership, I was talking with a friend of mine who is a branding consultant, marketing branding consultant, and Ethan Ethan said, "Dude, your brand sucks." I'm like, well, okay, thank you. That's a good friend that'll tell you that. So what do I do
Yeah.
about it? It's like, well, let's fix it. So we spent the next 3 months, and we would talk. I don't know, probably every other week for like an hour or two at a time, shooting the shit, talking about various things in life and stuff like that. And then one day in the middle of the call, it's like, oh, it came to us, both of us almost at exactly the same time: tribe and purpose.
Wow.
Because I come from a tribe, the special ops tribe, and there were some other references that we use in Afghanistan about tribes, and not the local tribes, but the special ops tribes. And it was the how do you move people forward? They have to have a purpose. They have to know what they're doing. Why are you here? Here is your purpose. So well, that's when we shifted and rebranded it to Tribe and Purpose, because we want to help people through fulfilling our purpose of creating a legacy of leaders. Is we want to help people have clarity and resolve in their purpose and build a tribe around it so that they can all have more success in life.
Mm.
That's where it all came from.
I love that. And you've been running that for 14 years now?
Uh, well, the greater sense of it. I've been doing the Tribe and Purpose. We rebranded the Tribe and Purpose 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago or so.
Very nice.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of wisdom that you have to share there. Like, I think one of the things that I've done is I put together a basic, well, I'm almost ready to launch it, transition out of the Army course that goes a lot more into less on how to find a job and more on how to find your purpose and your identity and connect with a tribe. You know, because I think
Mm,
that one of the things that really hurts us is the fact that once we lose our community and tribe, we don't really know how to get a new one. We don't have the skills to
mhm.
do it. And that takes some doing. That takes some work and some conscious effort and some experimentation. And I think that our community as veterans would be a lot better off and a lot healthier if we had a, more of a focus on that.
Oh, I agree. It's you know, I tell guys all the time, when you get out, you need to know why and what you're doing and have intention in it. And then the other thing is you've got to fill the gap, uh, the camaraderie gap that is there. And that can be done in any number of ways, from joining some fraternal organization, whether, you know, if you're SF, it's the SF Association, or VFW, or American Legion, or uh, Team Red, White, and Blue, or Rubicon, or whatever, or just set up a twice a month or a monthly call with you and some of your buddies and
Mm.
do that, because the you don't realize how fortunate you are in the military to be surrounded by guys and gals that have
Oh
the
yeah.
same principle and focus that you do. And when you step away from that gap, if you don't intentionally pursue filling that gap, it will be a hindrance to your happiness and success.
I couldn't agree more. Any kind of notes or any other nuggets of wisdom to drop on our listeners, those that might be, like, I would say honestly, even up to a couple of years in their transition, because sometimes you bungle it
Mhm.
up and you need to start all over again.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Quit trying to figure it out on your own and ask for help.
Mm,
Whether you want to go to a nonprofit organization and get help for free, you want to pay somebody to help you, or you want to just talk to a buddy or somebody you
yep.
met. Uh, you cannot get help unless you tell somebody you want help. Uh,
Mm,
and I think that to include depression, PTSD, any mental disorder like that. If you feel like your shit just feels fucked up, then raise your hand and ask for help. And if
mm,
the first place you raise your hand and seek help doesn't doesn't work, if you call the VA and you get stuck in a quagmire of the system in the VA, there's plenty of other organizations out there and people out there that will help you and guide you and hold you, uh, support you through that struggle. But nobody can do it until you say that you need the help. Because I can tell you, we're all too damn smart. And if I don't want you to know that I'm feeling sad and depressed and suicidal, then guess what? You
yep.
won't know.
Well, it's almost like a thing like we're encouraged not to do in the military. I mean, I remember I went in to get some counseling or some therapy when I was a rear detachment XO and was about to get out. And they're like, "Well, are you planning on killing yourself or someone else?" Like, no. And like, we can't really help you. If you hold a secret clearance, right, that can like actually kind of catapult you. So I feel like we're fighting against this sense of we're encouraged not to ask for help, and we feel that asking for help is somehow weak, but in fact, like, that can be one of the strongest things we do. I feel like if veterans ask for help more in any capacity, they'd be a lot healthier as well, which is again part of the
Yeah.
reason why I'm doing this, so we can, like, for you, a 25, maybe 25 plus year army guy in green beret, to be able to say, hey, ask for help, it's okay, hey, meditate, it's okay, it's training your mind, that's super valuable right there.
Yeah. Good. Good. And those are points that I continue to emphasize because the irony is when we were in the units together and you're in the team room and you couldn't figure something out or you couldn't get through something or you didn't understand something, you turn to your Bravo, your Charlie, your Echo, and you ask them. Even if you were the Echo and you were the expert, supposed to be the expert, and you couldn't figure it out, you know what you did? You asked your team sergeant. You asked for help. And it's ironic that when we take the uniform off, we don't do that.
Mm,
So
yeah. Powerful stuff, man. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your path. It was really really amazing to kind of see a different perspective, and I'm jealous a little bit because I wanted to be SF. That's why I was snowshoeing at -40 and lost a toe and a half like a dumbass. No, seriously, I was
hey,
doing
but there for the grace of God go I, because of the stupid shit I did in Alaska. God,
man, I just bit off more than I could chew one day at -40 and got a little bit lost, like most lieutenants do. And it took me
yeah.
8 hours to navigate out of there. Man, I almost lost half my foot. It was pretty gnarly. Really
Oh
bad
wow,
neurovascular damage to my fingertips and everything. But now I'm happily living in Colombia, playing guitar and dancing. So can't complain.
there you go, man.
So
Salsa,
yeah,
salsa.
life has a way of working itself out. Thank you,
Yes, it
man. Thank you for
does.
being part of this community, and I'm looking forward to getting some ideas and thoughts on the transition course when I'm ready to deploy it, so that we can get the information into the hands of our brothers and sisters that need it the most, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me today.
It's my pleasure, brother. All right, gonna kill recording and then